Then it is 6:32, and I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Camarillo and Oxnard Airport Authority. I'd like to welcome our two new members, Gabe Turan and Dr. Martita Martinez Bravo. And welcome aboard. 6:32, and I'd like to call to order this meeting of, okay. Now I'm hearing an echo.
Oh, I just fixed that.
Okay.
We're good.
Thank you.
That was on me.
Okay. Let's see. Mr. Turan, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you very much. Everybody, if you can join me in saluting a flag of the United States of America, place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
One nation.
Liberty, justice for all.
God, justice for all. Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead with a roll call, please.
All righty, for Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Here.
Supervisor Lopez.
Here.
Mayor Santangelo.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez Bravo.
Here.
Scott Bear.
Here.
Camarillo has a quorum. For Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Here.
Supervisor Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Perallo.
Here.
Councilmember Taran.
Here.
Eugene Fussell.
Here.
Oxnard has a quorum.
You're on mute, Susan.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, there are not any from the airport.
Okay, moving on. We'll move to the approval of minutes. We'll start with the Camarillo minutes. Are there any changes that need to be made?
No, I'll motion to approve. Long.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Okay, and these are for the Camarillo Airport Authority minutes. Supervisor Long.
Here.
Supervisor, thank you. Supervisor Lopez.
Yes.
Mayor Santangelo.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Bravo.
I will be abstaining given that I was not present.
Thank you. Scott Bear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion passes unanimously 4-0 with one abstention by Councilmember Martinez Bravo.
Okay. Dr. Fussell, you want to handle the Oxnard minutes?
Yes. Well, motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting in November.
So moved.
It's been moved in second. Can we have a roll call?
Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez.
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo.
Yes.
Councilmember Taran.
Staying from this vote as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Eugene Fussell.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously 4-0 with one abstention by Councilmember Taran.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now it is time for public comments. This is for comments that are not on the agenda. Do we have public comments?
Yes, we do. I will go ahead and read an announcement to the public and we'll get started. If you would like to be added to the public comment queue, please be connected via Zoom. If not already connected and wish to make a public comment, you can find the Zoom link on the last page of the meeting agenda, which can be found at vcairports.org/meeting-calendar. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 5, please press the raise hand button now, or if you are calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And I will get us started with some written public comments that we received. The first comment is from Arthur Beer. It reads, over Seabridge, there are still 2 problem high-pitched planes that fly over the South Island Seabridge regularly. Open paren for half-hour periods, close paren, during the day that block their tail numbers. Anything you can do to reroute these violators would be greatly appreciated. The noise and pollution problems have greatly improved over the past year in my area. Please commend the tower and ask they put pressure on these last 2 to go to another area. Keep up the good work. And a comment from Arthur Beer. The next comment is from Eleanor Crilly. It reads, "Dear sirs, I'm writing yet again with the hope that the incredible amount of noise we in Westport have had to endure will be diminished significantly. Some days aren't too bad, but there are days I have difficulty hearing my TV and talking on the phone. Oxnard and its citizens should not be subjected to this level of noise when a large number of planes are owned by people who live closer to Santa Barbara, Camarillo, and Van Nuys airports and should be flying out of these airports. I continue to believe this is happening because Oxnard is a majority city. Thank you for your time." And a comment from Eleanor Crilly, Bayside Circle. The next comment is from Rita Weingarten. It reads, "Good evening. My name is Rita Weingarten, and I am a resident of the Oxnard Shores neighborhood. Last week was an awful week for noise and traffic flying directly over our homes, with Monday, January 2nd and Saturday, January 7th being two of the worst days. We were informed that part of the reason for the increased open paren left, close paren traffic was due to a plane doing right turn touch and goes while having no radio communication. Why on earth would the tower allow a plane with zero radio communication to continue to do touch and goes? This seems like a very dangerous situation, and it lead to a horrible increase in left turn traffic over our homes. I'm still miffed by the number of fly-friendly violators who continue to, quote, cut the corner at 5th Street, unquote, and who choose to fly directly over Oxnard Shores, rather than proceed out over the ocean a half mile before turning or turning before the canal. It seems to be the same flight schools, including several local ones that are not following the recommended pattern and consistently fly, quote, unfriendly, unquote. A right turn before the canal is the best solution, but evidently the tower is having a difficult time effectively communicating this. I understand the Oxnard Airport is shifting to the accountability phase, and I look forward to hearing more specifics on what is going to be done to the schools and pilots who continue to ignore and violate the fly-friendly program. Thank you," and a comment from Rita Weingarten. The next comment is from Joni Conterno. It reads, "Regarding flight school touch and go training out of Oxnard Airport, there has been some reduction in the frequency of flights directly over Oxnard Shores. Thank you. The efforts to, quote, educate, unquote, flight schools to voluntarily comply with the fly-friendly pattern is admirable, but does not seem to be sustainable as many local flight schools continue to violate the VNAP. The list of violations following the September 13th, 2022 fly-friendly forum is considerable, and we have been patient, as requested by the airport, to allow the, quote, educational period, unquote, to run until the end of the fourth quarter to be followed by accountability. We are now in Q1 of a new year, and there are days of repeated invasive touch and go flights violating the VNAP. One example, January 2nd, in the middle of the day, Camarillo Flight Instruction, CFI, open paren, attendees of the fly-friendly forum, close paren, had 3 planes in simultaneous touch and go rotations, all in violation of the VNAP, like nothing has changed. 3 planes, same flight school at the same time does not sound like an oops, we didn't know. It is time for accountability to become what education has not been able to fully accomplish. We look forward to the details on the VNAP accountability proposed to ensure the success of VC Fly Friendly and to protect the safety and well-being of our communities around Oxnard Airport. Thank you, and a comment from Joni Conterno. And that concludes the written public comments that were received. And Dave, if I can turn it over to you for any folks with their hands raised.
You bet. We have Mark Sweeney, Barb Filkins, and Ben Benedetto with who have indicated they would wish to speak. So let's start with Mark Sweeney. And they've all been brought in already. So Mark, if you're ready, go ahead and unmute, show your video if you like, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I just have my picture up, and I hope you can hear me okay. Is that correct? Okay.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I'm a Oxnard Shores resident that lives just south of Woolley, and so I'm in the mix with the number of the people that are complaining, although it seems that my neighbors don't have any issues with the airport. But first, I wanted to start and congratulate the Department of Airports on the Discovery Day on the 10th of December, and they did a great job of getting local people, particularly kids, and got them to fly, even though it was kind of a miserable weather day. But it was very successful. So Department of Airports, Barb Filkins in particular, as a volunteer, and there were other numerous nonprofits that participated, like the EAA chapter at Oxnard and Camarillo, the 99s, the Camarillo Flying Circus with their remote control aircraft, AeroVironment, and so on. It was wonderful, and I hope we can see more of that. That just goes to show that there are people around the Oxnard Airport that are interested in it and would be and are learning more about it. Unfortunately, it seems that Oxnard Airport is is kind of left in at the lower end. We had one of the commenters talking about maybe even on racial things, but my personal opinion is that the Aviation Advisory Commission and the two authorities have not put any emphasis into Oxnard. All the events that happen seem to be at Camarillo, whether it be air shows, things like career days and things like that. And I think it's high time that the airport, particularly the Oxnard Airport Authority, whose charter and includes representatives from the city of Oxnard, need to be working on this harder than they have been. And really what it comes down to in my mind later on is that the fact that we really only have, we have too many commissions and authorities to do what needs to be done. I think you need to consider combining them or doing something different. So I'm out of time, so I'll yield the rest of my time back. Thank you.
All right, the space bar wasn't working, so we will do the mouse thing. So Barb Filkins, you're up, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay. Am I up? This is a little bit of a personal passion because a lot of my life has been spent in the healthcare industry, so health and social services, underserved populations, especially in the state. But especially I wanted just to say a few words about the December 10th day of discovery at Oxnard Airport. And I guess I played a relatively pivotal role. Director Freitas will have more detail when he gets to his reports. Anyway, the whole event started instantly enough. I stopped to talk to Keith. We discussed an outreach event at Oxnard and the EAA Young Eagles program, maybe in 2023. I said, why wait? What about December? We looked at available weekends, and it was basically off to the races. Basically, the envision scope was pretty broad. There were skeptics, but every agency or every organization in the county I touched said, yeah, why not? And I've learned that sometimes wild ideas mean wild rides. And it was a pretty wild ride for me from mid-September to mid-December, but it turned out successful. And there are several solid reasons why I figured it would be successful. Aviation, for most of us in the industry, is a passion that we want to share. And close to that is the desire to reach out to make it real for those who don't realize it's within reach. You need to discover what is out there before you can chase a dream. And that resonated with school districts that my team talked with. Aviation is also a community. If you throw us a challenge, we tend to pull together. And this event had every aviation industry organization in the county playing together, plus a few others. And finally, there's the threat of an asset loss. And that brought us together as a community across the county. Oxnard is not just a place to practice for a rating or store an airplane. The benefits it offers doesn't just end with pilots. With vision and planning, the airport has the capability to lead to future opportunity, hopes and dreams for the local communities in the county at large. We have the high school, the Unified High School District wanting to bring the ROTC, Air Force ROTC students in for a tour and speakers. And finally, as one pilot, or as one parent who called me before the event said, with tears in her voice, this was the first event that had come along that pulled her son away from the depression he had been in since the pandemic started and made him want to engage in life. So for me personally, how this event flowed together kind of made me believe there's still something called magic in this world. I'm technical and I am aligned with policy, but I think when the motive is right, things somehow align. And the challenge we have now is how to capture the magic of that day and carry it forward.
Very good. Thank you, Barb. Mr. Di Benedetto, if you're ready, you have 3 minutes. You can show your screen if you like.
There we are. Great. Thank you so much. And welcome to the new members, Dr. Martinez and Councilman Turan. My comment on this is really relates back to what Rita said a little bit earlier. We did have a couple of really bad days, and one reason on one of those bad days was that one aircraft that she mentioned that the radio wasn't working and the tower had no contact and all that kind of stuff. And as he was doing a myriad of touch and goes on one side of the airport, all the rest of the traffic was pushed to the other side of the airport, which overflew our neighborhood. And as we've said before, they don't just overfly us once when they come over our neighborhood, it's on the way out, all the way back. I'm actually not complaining about that under the circumstance because it's a safety issue. And we've never, ever asked the airport or the staff or any of the authority boards or the advisory board to do anything that would affect the safety of the area. So I'm not a pilot. I don't know, how do you deal with a situation like that? And I understand the difficulty of it, but I think if the airport communicated to the neighborhoods, potentially through the neighborhood council or some other way, or made announcements or however you guys want to handle it, when something like that is going on, it would be helpful for the community to know that. And it would also be helpful for the community to understand how you guys have to deal with it. So, you know, that really is the issue. Also, we have been patient in the fourth quarter. There were conversations with city council, board of supervisors, the airport, and all of that we as a group that have been quite active wanted to afford the airport the fourth quarter to implement their fly-friendly program. And quite frankly, there have been some days that have been great, and there have been other days that have been acceptable. But we still have far, far, far too many days that are not acceptable or not great. And I understand we're entering a new phase of this program, which would be the accountability phase, and I applaud that. I'd like the airport staff to give us some idea of what accountability looks like. If it's limiting the number of stop and goes, if it's limiting the number of planes in the traffic for stop and goes, if it's limiting the fact that they actually have to touch the ground and stop the airplane and re-taxi or whatever those might be. So my time is running out. I thank you for your time and I'll yield back.
All right, very well. Chairs, we do not have any other public members of the public who have indicated they wish to speak.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving along, that brings us to new business. And for Camarillo, that brings us to item A, which is the selection of chair and vice chair for calendar year 2023. Is there a staff report for this? Or do we just dive in?
Madam Chair, there is not a staff report. You may just dive in.
Okay. So I guess we will open up the nominations for chair. Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you, Chair Santangelo. I would like to nominate Mr. Scott Bear for the position of chair for 2023.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm flattered.
And I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have a nomination / motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, then let's just move on with a vote on the nomination for Scott Bear for chair.
Okay, and this will be for chair of the Camarillo Airport Authority. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Bravo,
Yes.
and Scott Bear.
I guess so. Yes. Yes.
All righty, that motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Excellent. Congratulations, Scott.
Thank you. I'm excited. It'll be fun.
I'm going to hand the meeting over to you right now.
Okay. Symbolic gavel pass
Yes,
over
yes.
Zoom.
Yes, I don't have anything. Here's my pen.
Okay, so the next item that we have to deal with is a vice chair. Do I have any nominations? Well, I have one. Just going back and forth between the city and the county. I'd like to nominate Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you. If that's appropriate, yes.
I saw your hand up and I was waiting for someone to call on you. It's me, Mayor Santangelo.
I'll second that nomination.
Any comment or discussion? Any other nominations? Can we have a roll call vote?
Okay, and this will be for Vice Chair for the Camarillo Airport Authority. Supervisor Long,
Yeah.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Bravo,
Yes.
Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Great. Okay, next item on our agenda is the approval of the oh wait, I'm ahead of myself. The consideration of resolution 16 approving remote teleconferencing for meetings of the Camarillo Airport Authority pursuant to the government code section 54953. We've voted on this many times. I think we're all very familiar with it. Is there any discussion? I'll move that we adopt resolution 16 authorizing remote teleconferencing.
I'll second. Long.
Can we get a vote?
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Bravo,
Yes.
Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Okay, moving along. The next item is C on the agenda, and that would be approval of and authorization for the Director of Airports or his designee to sign amendment number 1 to the consulting services contract for the master plan to transition it to the airport layout plan. Do we have a report on that?
Chair Bear, we do. We have from our staff, Aaron Powers will give a quick overview of this item.
Good evening, Chair Bear and authority members. Aaron Powers, Projects Administrator for the Department of Airports. In April of 2020, the Department of Airports awarded a contract to Kaufman Associates for a master plan update for Camarillo Airport. Responding to community feedback and city concerns, we worked with the FAA to transition the master plan update for Camarillo to a airport layout plan update, or for short, we called it an ALP update. The benefit to shifting it from a master plan to an ALP update is that, you know, a master plan opens the possibility for looking at the future role of Camarillo Airport, and the airport layout plan update is a much more narrowly focused study, which is really allows the airport to update our planning, our near-term planning goals, and bring our airport layout plans into compliance with FAA standards, all while maintaining the airport's current role. And this is important for us to be eligible for federal funding. So the contract amendment before you formally documents that change and also adds language translation and interpretation services to the contract that were not originally included in the master plan project, but we believe are important to increase communication and outreach with our community. While the transition from a master plan to an ALP update reduces the contract amount, it is important to note that the overall out-of-pocket cost to the airport will be increased compared to the original contract. And we're essentially going from $0 out of pocket that we were looking at for the master plan update to a little over $333,000 out of pocket now for the master plan. I'm sorry, for the airport layout plan update. And this is really due to several factors. The master plan was funded at 100% level with the FAA. And when we negotiated the transition, that dropped down to 90% of eligible expenses. And it did not include that we have to pay for some costs already incurred under the master plan that are no longer eligible for reimbursement under an ALP update. But I do want to point out that the majority of the increase out of pocket costs of approximately $228,000 really comes from the significant commitment and investment in communication and transparency that the airport is putting into this study. And we're doing that by maintaining community information workshops throughout our layout plan update, which is not a normal part of an airport layout plan update. That's usually only done in a master plan. And we also, the increased costs because of the added Spanish language translation of narratives and the live meeting interpretation with Spanish Mixteco interpretation services that we're going to be including. Therefore, staff is requesting that your authority recommend the board approve the request to amend the contract. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are we going to get a presentation from Kaufman on this?
You're going to get a presentation of the planning updates.
Okay,
But
but Kaufman's not related to this piece. We're not going to get anything from them on this item agenda.
That's correct.
Item. Okay. I have a comment. First of all, I think it's fantastic that the Department of Airports is committing nearly $250,000 to transparency. I think that is consistent with what Director Freitas has been preaching since he started, and that's transparency and public engagement. And to use an old cliche, the Department of Airports is putting its money where its mouth is, and I think that's terrific. I think it's really important. I was reading through the contract, Ms. Powers, and I noted that under the ALP, there's only going to be 3 public meetings because one of the meetings was used during the master plan process. And I noted that we have 4 members of Kaufman with us today. I'm wondering if they, given the volume of business that the Department of Airports does with them, whether we can move some money around, not increase the contract price, but just move some dollars around here and there and put a 4th public meeting into the ALP process. I just think in terms of transparency and public engagement, I think it's important, especially given lately how members of the community have been so vocal and active. I think that would help on the transparency front.
Chair, was that a question for our consultant or really for airport staff? Because I'd be happy to.
Well, I don't know that it would be appropriate for me to address the Kaufman folks, since they're not really part of this agenda item. But whether it's to you or to Ms. Powers to have that discussion with Kaufman offline, I just think it would be a plus to have those 4 meetings.
Fair enough.
May I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
My hand is up.
Your camera's off, Councilman.
Okay. I'm sitting in a car and the camera's not working in this. I just left the VCOG meeting at Camarillo Council. I apologize. And I want to thank Ms. Lopez for helping me get back on this thing. But Chair, I appreciate your comments and your concerns greatly. but I'm wondering, is county council there to address the question that you've asked? Because when we start talking about changing a contract, as this recommendation is, and amendments to a contract, and then your very good suggestion, I would hope that an attorney is available to answer those questions presently. Is the county council here to answer those questions?
I don't see him on our panel list. Mr. Nafee, do we know
Yeah, county council, I chaired, county council is not with us tonight. I will touch on that in our director's report later on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for letting me ask the question. I think it's significant, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Supervisor Long.
Thank you very much. Aaron Powers, thank you for bringing this to us. I do think it's important for us to understand what our layout plan is going to be for the Camarillo Airport. I was wondering, at some time, will we be also doing one for the Oxnard Airport?
No, the Oxnard Airport had an airport layout plan update that was adopted in, I want to say 2020.
Okay, and the reason why I'm saying that is I think that is important for our new board members and current to just go over that and make sure we also understand what's going on at the airports and to know what great possibilities that there are. I heard in some public comments today about it. So as we review
Sure.
for Camarillo, I think it would be helpful also for Oxnard. So just wanted to put that in there. Thank you very much for this information.
And we can make sure that the airport layout plan is available, but we also went through this public process for the contract and the grant funding with the Oxnard Airport layout plan update as well.
Yes, so we are following suit, which is fabulous. And if it helps us to get the funding, that's an added bonus to me, I think. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Long, did you have another question? Your hand is still up.
Nope, I just was gonna lower it just now.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I wonder, Director Freitas, given my comment and Council Member Perillo's comment, whether we should defer this a month and see if that fourth meeting can be added and then bring it back. What do you recommend?
I would ask that we not hold us off. Again, our commitment hasn't changed. You know, we will work with a consultant if there is ability to move funds and that is needed. The bottom line is we are committed to this. If additional meetings are needed, we will make that happen. That has always been a commitment on our side. Again, if we can find additional funds in the contract because we don't need, this area of services, that is common practice to do those kinds of things.
Great. Then let's call a vote. I move that we approve the contract.
I will second. Thank you.
Can we get a roll call?
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Bravo,
yes,
Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Thank you.
And if I'm reading correctly, that is the Camarillo agenda. Turn it over to the Oxnard side of the house.
Dr. Fussell, I think you're on mute.
I think he's frozen. Oh, no.
Now, Dr. Fussell, you're still on mute. He's working on it.
Okay, I think that got it.
There you go.
Okay, all right. I think the first order of business for the Oxnard Airport Authority is to select a chairperson for this year. And the floor is now open for nominations. I see a hand up, but I don't know whose hand that is.
Perello,
Recognize Councilman Britt Perello.
I would like to put Dr. Eugene Fussel's name in nomination for the chair. He has served as a temporary with the issues that have happened recent in the past. I think he's done a good job, and I believe he deserves a full term as the chair. And I put his name in nomination for chair of the Oxnard Airport Authority.
I will second that, Chair Fussell. This is BNA.
It's been moved in second that Eugene Fussell set for a full year as chair. Can we get a vote?
Are there any other nominations?
With no other nomination, we still need a roll call.
But we need to make sure there's no other nominations. That's all.
Okay. Any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, let's do a roll call.
Okay, and this will be for the chair of the Oxnard Airport Authority. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perello,
Yes.
Councilmember Teran,
Yes.
Eugene Fussell.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously 5-0.
The next order of business would be to have a vice chair, and I would like to nominate Councilman Bert Perello.
Can I ask a question? Does the Oxnard also go from city to public member to county supervisor?
I don't know. Maybe somebody from staff can help me there.
Yes, that typically has been the process followed by both authorities.
Okay.
If that's the case, I would like to nominate the Supervisor Vianney Lopez.
Supervisor Lopez has been nominated as our second nomination.
I'll second it.
Okay. It's been second. Can we have a voice count?
Are there any other nominations, just to make sure everything's going to well?
Okay, in the absence of any other nominations, I think we're ready for a
Okay, and this will be for the vice chair of the Oxnard Airport Authority. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perello,
Yes.
Councilmember Teran,
Yes.
and Eugene Fussell.
yes.
That motion passes unanimously 5-0.
I think the next thing on the agenda is the receive and file a presentation for the Kaufman Associates regarding the airport layout plan and the noise compatibility study for both airports. I have a question. The Camarillo Authority just discussed and voted on the this is issue number C. How does this differ?
Chair, I think we missed an item E before we get down. I think you jumped.
Oh, yeah, we jumped the teleconference thing.
Yes.
But while we're here, let's deal with this.
Okay. Say again the question, sir.
It seems like C and F are almost the same. How does this differ?
They are different in that C is the contract. That's the contract with the consultant, Kaufman and Associates, and the change from what we had in master plan to ALP narrative study. What you're going to see in F is Kaufman giving a high level overview of the two Part 150 noise studies and the ALP. So it's a presentation by Kaufman.
Okay. Understood. Are there any other questions concerned with reference to F?
Chair, do you want to go back to E to wrap that up and then we'll dive into the presentation, or would you like them to dive right into that presentation?
No. Let's go ahead and deal with the Brown Act. The thing we have to consider now is adoption of the resolution of number 16, which is the code section 54953, which is the Brown Act, actually for having remote meetings. Is there any discussion on that? I see a couple of hands up, Mr. Rand.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Fussell. Councilmember Perillo had his hand up first. I don't know if he.
I'm sorry,
had something he still wanted to do.
I don't
that's-
see you. I'm
if-
sorry.
If there is no discussion, Dr. Fussell, I'd move the recommended action. But if there's discussion, I'll hold off.
Mr. Turan, do you have a question with regards to the Brown
I
Act?
do. Yes, thank you very much. So just a quick question, possibly for staff or Director Freitas. So I have no problem continuing with this item. It sounds like Councilor Perillo is going to make the motion or move for the item, at which point I will go ahead and second when he does that. Looking at this, so I'm just wondering, we have this month and then we have the month of February, and for AB 361, it's anticipated that if Governor Newsom's original plan to expire the emergency order at the end of February continues, then we would fall under AB 2449, if I'm not mistaken on that. And I'm just wondering if we have thoughts on what that would look like, given the new guidelines we'd need to follow if and when that comes into place. Again, the variable being if the emergency order is not rescinded.
Yes, you are correct. We are hearing the same information at this point, which of course could change, but we're expecting the governor to terminate his emergency order the last day of February, and any meeting after that date then would be live in person. And at this point, we have set up our large conference room here at the Camarillo Airport in the Airport Administrative Office, and that's where we intend at this point to hold our meeting, starting the first meeting in March.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rand. Mr. Perillo,
If there's no other comments, I'll move the recommended action, and I hope that sometime in the future we can also have a meeting in the Oxnard area. But I move the recommended action. Thank you for the questions, Mr. Turan.
Thank you, and I will second that.
okay, it's been moved and second that we'll continue with the Brown Act at least through February.
And would you like a roll call vote, Chair Fussell?
Yes, go ahead.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perillo,
Yes,
Councilmember Teran,
Yes.
Chair Fussell.
Yes,
That motion passes unanimously 5-0.
okay, we can go ahead with the presentation now, I think.
Okay, chairs, Director Freitas, just to kick it off, and I'll hand it off to the lead with Kaufman. His name's Matt Quick. But basically, this is the company that is going to lead the 3 public processes, the 2 Part 150 noise compatibility studies, one at Oxnard, one at Camarillo Airport, and then the airport layout plan update for the Camarillo Airport. Matt, if you'll kick it off, introduce your team. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Good evening, Chair Fussell and members of the Oxnard Airport Authority, as well as Chair Bear and members of the Camarillo Airport Authority. It's a pleasure to be with you guys this evening, and thank you for allowing us to take a few minutes of your time to provide a high-level overview of the planning projects that we're looking forward to working with the Department of Airports on over the course of the next several months. Then those 3 projects include the Camarillo Airport Layout Plan Update, as well as the Camarillo Airport and Oxnard Airports Part 150 noise compatibility studies. So like Keith had mentioned, we're going to provide a high-level overview this evening of those particular projects. But just before we get into that, I did want to introduce the members of the project team that are in attendance at this evening's meeting. And again, my name is Matt Quick with Kaufman Associates, and joining me is Patrick Taylor. And Patrick and myself are going to be involved primarily with the Camarillo Airport layout plan update. And then we also have Corey Lewis and Maddie Holloman, and they are going to be involved primarily with the Part 150 noise compatibility studies for both airports. And I think it's important to mention, and Aaron talked about it briefly a while ago, we also have Ariano Associates on our team as a subconsultant, just given the level of public outreach and transparency that we know is important to these particular studies. Ariano and Associates will be coming alongside us and working with us and the Department of Airports as we get into the public meetings as we move forward in the coming weeks and months. So one of the things, just before I hand it off to Patrick Taylor to talk about the airport layout plan update, is just to look at the schedule. If you could advance to the next slide, please. This provides just a high-level look at the three particular studies. The Camarillo Airport layout plan is at the top, and then the two Part 150 noise compatibility studies for Camarillo and Oxnard are in the middle of the screen and then at the bottom. I think it's important to note that we're basically starting all three projects right now, but each project has its own list of elements and tasks that are going to be specific to each study. So while they're all starting at about the same time, they will take on their own schedules over the course of the next several months and may end at different times. But we are certainly satisfying all the elements and tasks that are prescribed by the Federal Aviation Administration as we move through these particular projects. You'll notice at the bottom of each one of those schedules for each project, we have three different phases. We've got a pre-work phase, a study phase, and then a documentation phase. And I'm going to let Patrick and Corey talk about those in more detail when they get into the particular studies. But just know that we have started the work on these studies. And there's some elements within, in particular, the Camarillo Airport layout plan update that are going to feed what's needed for the Camarillo Part 150 noise compatibility study as it relates to the inventory and forecast. So we're currently doing some work as it relates to that, but we'll be getting into a lot more detail on these tasks and elements as we move forward to inform the members of the various committees as well as the general public. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Patrick Taylor, and he's going to provide an overview of the Camarillo Airport layout plan update. And then when he's done, he's going to pass it off to Corey Lewis, who will speak to the Part 150 noise compatibility studies. And we'll be happy to help answer any questions or comments that you guys may have. So thank you. Patrick, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Again, Patrick Taylor with Kaufman Associates. So I'm going to be serving as the lead planner on the ALP update and narrative report. So I've got a few slides to kind of describe what that process is. Dave, if you'd like to go to the next slide. So as you all know, this is a shift from what was originally a master plan project to an ALP update. So in 2021, the airport had initiated a master plan to meet FAA requirements for updating planning documents. And some early feedback that was received from the public and the surrounding communities showed there was little support for a larger master plan that could potentially consider changes to the role of the airport or airport operations. So the airport department went back to the FAA and negotiated with them, and both agreed to kind of scale this back to an ALP update rather than a full master plan. This study will still meet the FAA's minimum planning standards with the assumption that the airport will maintain its current role. So no changes to Camarillo Airport's current role or scope beyond the existing joint powers agreement will be proposed in the study. So the project itself, it's officially called an Airport Layout Plan and Narrative Report, or an ALP update for short. The airport layout plan is a set of technical documents that depict the current and future planned condition of the airport. And those are required to be updated periodically and approved and on file with the FAA. The FAA uses those to support grant funding decisions for capital projects. And any project for which the airport is seeking FAA funds must be depicted on the ALP. So a master plan is the primary local planning document for an airport, and it's typically updated every 7 to 10 years and has about a 20-year scope. And it is necessary to update in that time frame to address changes in activity, changes in the aviation industry, and frequent FAA design standard changes. An alternative to a master plan is this study, an ALP update, which is more limited in scope and cost and typically has a shorter outlook. So we're going to be looking at about a 5 to 7 year capital improvement program at the end of this, as opposed to a master plan, which is a 20-year look. So the master plan for the airport was completed in 2011, and there have been many changes to FAA standards that we'll be able to address in this study. A couple of the elements that are new since the master plan was last completed is a requirement for a specific type of aerial survey called an Aegis survey. There's a whole slew of new taxiway design standards, new requirements for runway protection zones and land use planning guidelines. So we're going to be able to address all those things in this study. In fact, as Aaron said earlier, really we could probably refer to this as kind of an enhanced ALP update or ALP and narrative report, because it includes many of the master planning elements, such as public involvement, which is not required in an ALP update. And as Aaron mentioned, they have added at their own expense language translation and interpretation. So we'll be able to include those elements in the ALP update. So there are some assumptions we have going into this project, and I've mentioned them, some of them already, but the airport will remain a reliever general aviation airport. That's the role it has today. So we're moving forward under the assumption that that's what the airport will be in the future. We'll work within the guidelines of the JPA. There's a primary federal funding program for capital projects at airports. We're assuming that will be in place. And then most, if not all of the capital improvement projects that emerged from the study would be eligible for FAA funding. Next slide. So this is kind of the will and will not slide. So we're kind of reinforcing some messaging here, but the role of the airport will remain the same. The update will provide for a maintenance or rehabilitation of existing facilities and pavements. The ALP update will have a shorter capital improvement program, about 5 to 7 years. It will meet FAA's requirements to have an approved ALP on file. The ALP update is narrowly focused and will not consider changes to the role of the airport, and the ALP update will not consider such potential changes as scheduled airline service or large air cargo or extension of the runway. And so key takeaways, kind of repeating some of the messaging here, but the ALP update assumes there will be no change to the current role of the airport and would continue to operate under the guidance of the Joint Powers Agreement. So no plan for commercial service, no plan for large air cargo, and no plan for changes in the runway lane. Slide. So this is a little more detail on the project schedule for the ALP update. Typically, it'll be about a 15-month process. As Matt had mentioned, the pre-work phase, we've already begun. So that's basically internet research, data collection. So we've been working on those things. So as of today, we're essentially kicking off these projects, and we'll start by drafting an inventory chapter and new forecasts for the airport, which is a required element that will be submitted to the FAA for their approval. The FAA will also approve those technical drawings, the actual airport layout plan at the end of the project. And then we have other elements such as the facility requirements, which is what is needed based on the forecast demand. And then some development alternatives to meet that demand, as well as the capital improvement program. As Aaron mentioned, there is some public outreach included in the program. So there's 3 different spots now. And of course, there'll be further discussions about considering another meeting, but these are public workshops that would be advertised locally. There would be a presentation and then kind of an open house atmosphere with display boards around a room, and the whole project team and consultant team would be there to answer any individual questions. And then once we get to the end, we'll have a draft final report and airport layout plan set for review, and then we get to a final. So typically these take about 15 months, but there's FAA review times in there, which can be short or can be long. So we'll have to work within those confines. One important output from from this study will be the forecasts, which will feed into the Part 150 study. And we're also going to be developing a new forecast for the Oxnard Airport, which will feed into that Part 150 study. So with that, I'd like to kick it over to Corey Lewis, who's going to talk about the Part 150 studies.
Thank you, Patrick. Dave, if you could advance to the next slide. Chairs and authority members, appreciate the opportunity to join you this evening. As Matt said, I'm Corey Lewis, and I'm the project manager for the 2 Part 150 studies. And as we've discussed, we're in the pre-work phase for the 2 studies. And so we've had the opportunity to be in Ventura County this week. And thanks so much to the staff here for both airports for arranging visits throughout the week. So we've been able to talk to a lot of the airport operators and users and tenants to get a good feel of operations at the airports, which is essential to preparing a Part 150 study. Dave, if you could advance, please. And as we're talking about the Part 150 studies, we need to understand that there are several parties involved, and each has its own responsibility. So as we're thinking about the noise situation at the airports, we have pilots who are responsible for the safe operation of aircraft, both on the ground and in the air. The FAA establishes the airspace where aircraft may be flown, and also establishes aircraft noise standards for airports or for aircraft, and also certifies aircraft and pilots. So then Ventura County's responsibilities are actually one of the responsibilities they don't have is to control aircraft when they're in flight. But the county may establish run-up areas and voluntary noise abatement procedures for the airports. Ventura County also has a land use regulation responsibility, so establishing where and the type of development that could occur near airports. And then also the state of California has responsibilities related to real estate disclosure and preparation of airport land use compatibility plans. And lastly, it's important to note that the United States government doesn't have any land use authority with regard to airports and their vicinity. Dave, if you could advance, please. So as we're thinking about the Part 150 studies, it's important to note what a Part 150 study does and does not do. So on the Part 150 study is used to identify the current and projected annualized noise exposure levels around airports. So with this, we'll be preparing noise exposure contours to evaluate the potential for impacts in the vicinity of the airports. The Part 150 study can also be used with those noise contours to identify areas where future compatible development could occur. When we're thinking about the noise contours, we're looking for areas where potential incompatible development is currently planned. So those are the residential land uses or facilities like schools and those in the community. The Part 150 study can also be used to determine methods to reduce adverse noise impacts above FAA's thresholds, and can be also used to establish and implement a review process and update process for the program. It's important to note that a Part 150 study cannot be used to evaluate operations for operations at other airports. So we'll be preparing 2 separate studies, one for Camarillo, one for Oxnard, but we won't be looking at any sort of interaction of noise between the 2 airports. It's also important to note that we aren't looking at any other potential types of impacts, such as air quality or safety. So safety is typically addressed through an airport land use compatibility plan or a CLUP or ALUCP. And then it's important to note that we won't be using any other metrics besides CNEL, which is the community noise equivalent level. And then lastly, and kind of echoing what Patrick was saying, the Part 150 study can't be used as justification for airport expansion. So the Part 150 process is an 18 to 20 month process. During the course of the study, we'll be preparing 2 different volumes. The first one is the noise exposure maps. So that is where we're developing the noise exposure contours, and those are the actual noise exposure maps. Those noise exposure contours are overlain on land use mapping, which then in turn that process is used to identify any potential noise impacts. And then the noise impacts are where residential land uses or noise sensitive land uses are encompassed by the noise exposure contours. As Patrick mentioned, both of those studies will have forecast updates that will be prepared for each airport. And as we move out of the noise exposure maps, those documents are accepted by FAA as being accurate reflections of the noise condition for the two airports. And using those noise contours, we'll move into the noise compatibility program development. And there we will look at land use measures and potential noise abatement measures to potentially reduce noise impacts in the surrounding communities. As you can see along the bottom, there are several points where the public will be involved. So we have a planning advisory committees that will be formed for both studies. And those will include local representatives. We'll also invite FAA to participate, Caltrans to participate, airport operators or aircraft operators, pilots. And then we'll also engage the public through public workshops, and those will happen throughout the course of the studies. The first two public workshops, one for each airport, will occur in March. So the first one is on March 20th, and the next one is on March 21st. So we'll have Camarillo on the 20th and Oxnard on the 21st. And then at the conclusion of the noise compatibility program development, that noise compatibility program will be adopted and then submitted to FAA for approval. You could advance to the next slide, please. So here's a little more detail on the schedule. You can see there's a kind of right in the upper part of the graphic. There's what represents a noise monitor. So noise monitors will be placed in the community. So we'll be soliciting the public to identify sites where those monitors will be located. And then, as Patrick mentioned, there will be submittal of the documents to FAA, and it's uncertain how long that approval process or acceptance process will take. So that accounts for the 18 to 20 month process. As it's been mentioned before, we're reaching out to the public, and one of those ways is through development of individual project websites. The study websites will go live tomorrow. The links can be found at the county airport website, and there will be individual links from the website along with a notice that it's going out. And as Matt mentioned, Ariano Associates is a partner in this project, and they'll be providing translation services both live at the public meetings, but as well as on the websites will be translated into Spanish. So with that, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to join you this evening and give you an overview of all three of the studies. And with that, I think we're open to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Matt, Patrick, and Corey. I noticed we have a lot of hands up. First is Mr. Bayer.
I noticed on some of the graphics, on the line graphics, and it was referred to in passing about forecasts, and I didn't catch what was being forecasted. I wonder if I can get an explanation on that.
Sure, Chair. This is Patrick. So for general aviation airports, the forecasting elements are based aircraft, so the number of planes that live at the airport, and operations. And there's a whole bunch of subcategories to the operational forecast and a based forecast, including fleet mix and operations by aircraft type, things like that. So those are the two elements that are forecast over the next 20 years in an FAA forecasting element.
And what are the metrics that you use? What are the forecasting tools?
So we'll use multiple statistical measures and develop multiple forecasts for each element. And then in the end, as the forecast analyst, we'll need to make a judgment on which of the forecasts to be selected for planning purposes. So, I mean, it's trend analysis, regression analysis, standard statistical measures that many folks are familiar with.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Sure.
And Chair Bayer, I would like to add that those forecasts also include what's called an operational fleet mix, and that is used in the noise modeling. So we're identifying the very same aircraft that operate at each airport, and we have noise information about those aircraft, and that is fed into the noise model.
So, Mr. Lewis, are you forecasting, for example, whether there's going to be an increase in jet traffic or an increase in GA prop traffic, that sort of thing? Is that putting it in a nutshell? Is that what you're doing?
Yes. So the forecast will identify whether or not there would be a change in the number of operations conducted by the individual aircraft.
Got it.
Well, not individual aircraft type is more appropriate, not individual users.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Lopez, I think your hand was up next.
I think it's Councilmember Perello, so I'll defer to him and I can go after him.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor. If you could put the slide up that indicated what your tests will not do. There was one of the lines that has really bingo. Okay. Consider other types of impacts, air quality accidents, etc., and evaluate air operations from other airports. The top two bullet points under the what it does not do. Some months back, a former member of this body asked questions about when they're changing routes, high speed coming into the area and proximity of Camarillo, high speed, faster planes coming in and out. Will you look at issues potentially with high speed planes coming into from the Santa Barbara area to Oxnard, or high speed planes coming out of Camarillo over the Oxnard area? And the reason I'm asking the question is what was brought to the attention during public comment, that apparently we had a plane flying without radio contact to the tower or something. I hope you can understand what I'm trying to find out here.
So as a follow-up question, the operations you're referring to, were they going to or from either of the airports?
They were coming from the Santa Barbara area to a faster plane coming into Oxnard. And there was in the various discussions over the past about right turns, left turns, about a potential issue, a fast plane and a slower plane not seeing it, or a faster plane coming from Camarillo and potentially having a problem. I don't know if there would be or if there was, but do you consider that? And I know that it says right there, you don't do what other airports, but they're close proximity of Camarillo and Oxnard. That's why I'm asking the question.
Okay.
And I appreciate the report. All four of you individually, I appreciate what you're doing. It's going to be a big help for this community.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to working on the studies. So with regard to the speed of the aircraft, the noise model and the noise study won't necessarily take that into account.
Okay.
So we will be modeling, flight tracks and operations, but it does not take into account the speed of the aircraft.
If I might ask, quite on the same point, that evaluation operations from other area airports, a lot of the complaints that we get is that aircraft from Santa Monica and Van Nuys and Santa Barbara uses airport for touch and goes and that sort of thing. Are you going to give us some info on that? Is this first bullet saying that you're going to hands off that?
So it will. So when those aircraft come to either Camarillo or Oxnard, those operations will be reflected in the noise modeling. So that's, those will just go into when we're talking about the operational fleet mix, we look at itinerant operations, which are, maybe a cross-country type flight or, one going up and down the coast. And then they're also broken into local or training operations. So those training operations would take into account an aircraft that left another airport, maybe at Santa Monica and came here and did touch and goes. So we would reflect that noise in the study.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you, Dr. Fussell, and appreciate the presentation. This is very timely and very helpful. I have two sort of technical questions and one related to the current slide with the establishment of procedures. And I'm not sure if this might be a question for our Director Freitas to answer in terms of recommendations or these procedures that will be included in the report, if that will be adopted by the authority for implementation, or will we work on establishing recommendations that we will move forward based on the study? Director Freitas, if that's more appropriate for you to answer, or if Mr. Lewis can provide follow-up.
I will start off by saying it's probably going to be a combination of both, because there are things as we go through this Part 150 study, and the consultants can go in deeper into that the FAA, if we submit it to them, may not support or may not approve. But that doesn't mean the county, as kind of that highlight previous slide said, there are things we can voluntarily do. Many of the things we're kind of already working towards, but there may be other things that we may add to that we as a county can work to implement, working with the flight schools, doing those kinds of things. If there are things that fall within the guidelines of this Part 150 and we ship them off to the FAA that we expect that they'll get approved, then we would do that as well. But there are things that, if we just submitted them to the FAA, they might decline to approve those. And so we wouldn't, quite frankly, we already know the answer. We know the answer before we're going to ask the question on some of these things. So that's how I'd start off. And I don't know if Kaufman team has anything else to add.
Yeah, that's a correct summary. So in a lot of cases, when the noise compatibility program, so it's actually a list of all the actions that the county is going to take with respect to noise at the two airports. So those measures are identified and then submitted to FAA, and FAA has the option to approve or disapprove for the purposes of Part 150. Typically, measures that are approved for the purposes of Part 150, those measures reduce noise over residences that are within the 65 CNEL noise contour. So that's FAA's threshold, is the 65 CNEL threshold. And so if we are not able to empirically prove that we're reducing noise over residences within the 65 CNEL noise contour, then FAA would disapprove a measure. So even though a measure may, on its face, or just kind of would seem to everybody that it would reduce noise, but if we can't actually prove that it does mathematically, then they would disapprove it. But there is a process by which the county can submit measures or incorporate measures into the noise compatibility program, but not have FAA look at them.
Got it. And so that brings me to my other question, is that we won't necessarily have to take any action on the study or any actions to implement before, or sorry, let me backtrack a bit. Will the study go to FAA for approval before it comes to the authority for consideration?
No, it's the other way around. So we'll come back when we get the noise exposure map document. we'll come back. We'll request that Mr. Freitas receive authorization to sign the noise exposure maps and submit them to FAA. And then FAA would take action on the noise exposure maps.
Great.
And then
Thank you.
similarly, the noise compatibility program would be approved here, and then make its way through the county process and ultimately be submitted to FAA. So FAA wants to see documentation that it's been approved at the local level before they'll look at it.
Got it. Thank you. And I know you went through it, and I was trying to take a note of it. So I appreciate you repeating that information. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Saran.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. This is my first meeting, but a lot of really great information on this. I very much appreciate it. A question I have is regarding the noise measurements that were referred to, I believe a slide or two after this one. So I have a couple layers to my question. Actually, I take it back. That was a slide right there. Yes. Go back forward one more. Thank you. So I see in month 6, I can see that that's where we're doing noise measurements. And I'm wondering, these instruments that are using are, can you describe them just kind of verbally what they look like? Are they elevated instruments, microphones, or are they particularly specific equipment for this?
Yeah, so the right off the model number, it's a Larson Davis Model 831, and these are equipped specifically to be outdoors. So it's basically a Pelican case that includes a data logger with a cable that extends to a tripod with a microphone on top. It's got a windscreen, so it's a foam cover for the microphone, and then also bird spikes on top, so birds don't perch on the device. Typically, we will place them in a person's backyard, in an area that is away from a structure, which can cause noise to bounce off the structure, or off walls or fence or something like that, and commonly outside of backyards that have dogs. So that's what the equipment generally looks like. And then, they're placed at residences or at the airport for 24-hour periods. So the CNEL metric is a annual average day. And so in order to compare the noise condition at that airport on that day, we need to do a 24-hour measurement.
Thank you for that. And actually, you answered a couple of my follow-up questions was around where these are placed. And it sounds like, for the most part, in private residences by folks who are willing to open up their yard to the devices.
Yes, and we want to spread them around the airport too. We don't want to concentrate them all in one neighborhood.
Yes, absolutely.
The other unique thing about the noise monitors is that they have the ability to make a recording. So as the noise level exceeds a certain threshold, it will trigger the device to make a 5-second recording. So then we are able to go back and listen to those to identify whether or not it's an aircraft. Sometimes it's landscaping equipment, or vehicles, or just some other noise. We've had one near a pool, and there have been children playing in the pool, and that has caused it to go over the threshold. And then coupled with the department's VNOM system, we'll be able to identify hopefully certain aircraft based on a comparison of timestamps between the events and when the flight tracks occurred.
Understood. Thank you. And so, you see just from tonight's public comment period, there are a number of residents who have experienced, what they are stating is elevated noise levels, which has led us to partially do this study to begin with. And so I would imagine there might be no shortage of folks who would be willing to open up their properties to hosting this for 24 hours. My last, it's not really a question, but more of a comment. if the standard is to measure within a 24-hour period, I would imagine that based on the online system that the airports has, or airports has for lodging noise complaints, there might be some really good data to show when the spikes in complaints are, times of day, days of the week, things like that, that might have us be strategic? Or is there some other standard that is utilized in choosing when that 24-hour period takes place?
So it largely is based on the the schedule when we're out there. So it'll start in the morning typically, and then it'll go around to the next morning, and then we would remove it and relocate it. So there's not a specific start time. It just needs to be, the equipment needs to be collected 24 hours after it was placed.
Corey, I think a council member is asking, it's not just a 1 day, 24-hour period, it's multiple days.
Oh, okay. Now I understand. Yeah, it's so we'll be out. We have 4 setups, and then we have 8 locations where we need to be. So we'll move them around. So it's not just only on Tuesday of a week. It'll be out through the course of a week.
Okay, I appreciate that. And my last point, and thank you, Director Freitas, really is I believe we have the ability to be data driven, and when we choose a day of the week to do that, or time periods covered, I know it's 24 hours, but if we find the data shows that Saturday, from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the consistently highest time that we're getting complaints around noise, doing it on a Tuesday when those are the lowest complaints, we should be looking to be data driven on this. And I'm sure that our consultants are absolutely great at that. I just wanted to say it out loud. So thank you very much for the time on that. I'll turn it back to you, Chair. And thank you for the responses, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Saran. I think Dr. Martinez was next.
Thank you. And thank you for your presentations, Corey and Patrick. This is also my first meeting, so it's a whole new world of airports. And I had a question also about the air or the noise monitors on that page. So if I understand correctly, so you are going to be placing them depending also on the feedback from the community. And if that is the case, if I understand that correctly, then how will you ensure that communities who may not complain, maybe communities that are more marginalized within the cities, that they are also targeted, or that that those devices are placed so that you can capture data that is indicative of really what is happening?
Yeah, so we'll coordinate with the staff on this, and it won't just be in areas where people volunteer. We'll basically kind of create a grid around the airport and identify areas where we know we want to have monitors. So hopefully spreading those monitor locations out throughout the whole study area, ideally we get volunteers, but it is not uncommon as part of these studies to knock on doors and ask residents whether or not we can place the monitor at the residence as part of the study.
Corey,
good.
Corey, this is Keith. I don't want to give the impression to the committee members that you only use the noise monitoring to do this. Talk about, not too far in the weeds, but talk about the noise modeling, really, which is the core to this, and that you're using these monitors just to reinforce what you're getting from the modeling.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. So ultimately, what FAA wants to see is noise exposure contours. So those are an output from the FAA's standard noise model, which is AEDT, Aviation Environmental Design Tool. AEDT is the software package. And it's important to note that the noise monitoring results are not an input to the model. They are used to be compared to the noise contours, which are the output from the model. So it's the noise monitors are not an input, but compared to the output.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. Your hand is still up. Did he answer all your questions?
Yes, he did. Let me lower my hand. Thank you.
Supervisor Long?
Hi, thank you. Could you go back to the public outreach page? You showed some dates. Okay, let's see. Okay, what I'd like to know is how are you getting this out into the community so that they know what is going on, what it is, the communication to our residents throughout Ventura County, I think is important as well. And then also if you can touch in making sure that we have translators, how we're going to handle that, because I want to make sure that all of our community is able to hear these presentations and to provide feedback.
So first on that, the outreach, we are, we showed the websites, and then we're coordinating with the department to put out ads through social media. Those ads will also be placed in multiple newspapers, both English language and Spanish language newspapers. The ads will be translated into both languages, also relying on the airport's email blast system to outreach to people. So pretty wide range of options for notifying the public. We're also doing flyers that will go along with this. And, like I said, all of this launches tomorrow on the website. So there's going to be a notice that goes along with that, explaining the beginning of the studies and the availability of the websites. And, also through the websites for the Part 150 studies, we'll have a link for members of the public to basically self-nominate for participation on the planning advisory committees. And so through that, we're hoping to definitely connect with some of the neighborhood councils. So those people can go back to the people in their neighborhoods and their communities to help make them aware of the studies.
And then at the meetings, we'll be setting up for translation.
Yes, so they're actually all of the materials, not just the websites, but actually all the working papers, the chapters that go into the studies will be translated to Spanish. And then at the public meetings, there will be live interpreting services to communicate with the Spanish speakers at the meeting and throughout the course of the study.
Okay, wonderful. And then with your advertising for the meetings, is a week or 2 weeks? What is the plan? I know it sounds like we're starting from day one, but just the repeat. The reason why I say that is this is such a great project. I really appreciate the presentation, but we're as good as our outreach sometimes. And so I really want to make sure we get that public engagement. We've heard a lot of voices, but I want it a very well-rounded. It's also a great opportunity to advertise our airports and to make sure that people know what's going on at the airports. Oxnard Airport is such a great commodity. So is Camarillo. And so I think this will work great for many different aspects for these airports. And so I appreciate just going over that so we don't miss anything. It is that important. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. Mayor Santangelo.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, as has already been mentioned multiple times, for the report and for this presentation. I have a few questions that hopefully won't turn into more. First of all, when we started the master plan, I know that our former director had, and I don't recall it perfectly, so please correct me if I'm wrong, whoever wants to. But I believe he either had a group of electeds or that there were electeds as part of the advisory groups. I'm not quite sure. Is there any mechanism for that, or is this, or the advisory groups going to be purely people from the community?
So I can answer that for the ALP update.
That's what I meant for. Yes, thank you.
Sure. So this is Patrick again. So so a master plan typically has a group of stakeholders, a small group, 10 folks, 15 folks that comprise a planning advisory committee. And they serve as a sounding board to review draft material throughout the process. That type of group is not required in an ALP update, and we don't have that scoped for this project. But all the project material will be available to everyone. And so we would encourage folks to kind of assume that role and provide any comments and feedback that they have as we're making our way through the process.
And Mayor Santangelo, I'd like to add on to that. Obviously, our relationship with the city of Camarillo, we will be working closely with you and the city manager to make sure that you have that material and that your colleagues are able to comment. You know, obviously, I meet monthly with your city manager and yourself typically, and that will continue through this entire process.
Perfect. My other question, and you might have touched on this earlier, possibly with Council Member Tehran, will some of the noise that you capture from the machines and then maybe possibly from the modeling, will you be also using our tracking system? Is that tracking system help to do you try to correlate the noise to specific types of aviation or?
So yeah, so definitely we'll be using the flight track system to create geographic representations of the flight tracks for input to the modeling. So it's a spatial model. So we'll be using those flight tracks to identify the primary corridors where aircraft are flown. And then also we'll be relying on the information which indicates the type of aircraft that are operating at the airport, and is also the time of day for aircraft. So the noise metric that we use weights more heavily aircraft operations that occur at night, and so it's adds to the size of the noise contours and within the model. So then we're able to look at and get an understanding of the time of day for operations at both airports with that system. Great,
thank you so much.
It's actually, I will add that when doing this type of study, having access to a VNOM system it's a great addition to this type of study. We really get some great information out of it, and it improves the the quality of the noise contours, in my opinion.
Well, I get great information out of it, so I'm sure you get even more information out of it. And then I just was going to throw in a comment that as far as the PR and stuff, and I'm sure that Keith and the airport staff knows this, but I'm sure that the city of Oxnard, as well as I know the city of Camarillo, is more than willing to help with the outreach because we know how important it is to our communities. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any other questions or comments?
Chair Fussell.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a member of the public who has indicated they wish to speak.
Okay. Mary, you still have your hand up. I think, Anna, were you talking to me?
Yes, it was to share the same information Dave just shared with you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We have some public comments. So I think they're limited to 3 minutes, and we're ready to go.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and promote Walter Hagedorn, followed by Ben DiBenedetto. And then at the conclusion of the verbal public comments, I will read the written public comments into the record. Mr. Hagedorn, once you received your prompt to promote, please go ahead and unmute, share your screen if you'd like, and you'll have 3 minutes once you begin speaking. 3 minutes once you begin speaking.
I'm trying to unmute and trying to get my video up. Thank you, members of the Airport Authority. I'm Walter Hagedorn, Chair of the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council. I would like to comment on the Part 150 study for the Oxnard Airport. Previous to this new study, a lengthy 3-year 150 study was completed in the year 2000. Although we were aware of the noise exposure maps that were accepted by the FAA at that time, the full report was not available to us. After acquiring that study, we realized that the noise exposure maps were based on air traffic patterns that had been established by the airport and showed no traffic over Oxnard Shores or Channel Island Harbor. These maps were used in real estate disclosures provided to us when we purchased our homes and are still in effect today. Although we have been criticized for complaining about an airport that we knew about when we moved in, a reasonable person could look at the disclosures and the maps provided and be reasonably assured that flights would not go over Oxnard Shores. As we all know, that certainly is not the case today. Given this, it is imperative that the community be given representation in the presentation of this study. At the July 14th, 2022 Airport Authority meeting, Ben DiBenedetto, the chair of the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Transportation Committee, requested that the neighborhood council chairs or their representatives be part of the Planning Advisory Committee, the PAC, that oversees the 150 study, and that all documents be provided to the neighborhood chairs. Councilman Perillo recommended that the information be provided to the chairs, but the minutes of the meeting do not indicate that placing the neighborhood chairs on the PAC was included. I want to make sure that the participation of the neighborhood council chairs or their representatives on the Planning Advisory Committee be included in any resolution you pass this evening. The agenda package also shows that the status of the 150 study has already started, and that's the consultants are already determining flight patterns and other information that should be overseen by the Planning Advisory Committee. We need to be part of that. Also, it is noted that the FAA does not provide funding for this committee or other public input. It is important that the Department of Airports provide any additional funds that are required to ensure adequate public input. Also, in the status report, it also states that the consultant will provide data as the FAA requires. The FAA is in the business of maintaining airports, not necessarily of providing adequate public input to the study. Given that, it is important that the Department of Airports also provide any funding that is required outside of the FAA requirements to ensure that noise contours and other issues pertaining to our neighborhoods is provided. I would request that you include this information in the resolutions that you pass tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. DiBenedetto, if you can unmute, share your screen if you'd like, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. First, I want to congratulate Dr. Fussell and Supervisor Lopez on your appointments. We look forward to working with you. I obviously have to second everything Walt Hagedorn had to say about the involvement of the neighborhood councils. Councilman Perillo did amend the motion to get your current study approved to include the neighborhood councils, and it was passed. So I'm a little surprised that that doesn't reflect in the documents. That being said, the County Board of Supervisors and the City of Oxnard have paid zero attention to any of the recommendations that, as far as land use, that were in the 1998 to 2000 study. In their defense, the 150 study was not available to them. It was hidden or not available, either in archives or printed form anywhere, link, whatever it might be, for 23 years. And as a result, every recommendation you made about development around the airport has either been changed in its zoning. For instance, the Portofino, which was business, park, airport related, was changed to high density residential. Fully entitled, has not begun construction, but will be under construction, and your noise equipment needs to be there. The North Shore development at the west end of the runway between the estuary and harbor was fully funded, not funded, but fully entitled. We've had one developer that started the project, did some infrastructure, went under, sold the project to another developer who we've been in contact with and does plan to finish the development. That was a park and it was rezoned. Your recommendation, that's the most critical piece of land for entrance or exit to the airport runways. Teal Club, prime example. Old Teal Club along Little Farm Road, north end of the runway, east end of the runway. In your study, got up to 75 CNL. Your recommendation was the county buy that property. It could not be mitigated. Those people probably don't even know that 24 years later because nothing was available to them. Now you have another development that continues from the western end of the older development called New Teal Club that runs for a very long way, completely to the other end of the runway on the west end, that the County Board of Supervisors approved for development, but is still in the EIR stage. The city put off their response to the public's answers on the EIR from March of this past year until sometime this year. My point is that the County Board of Supervisors, when they voted for that, had no clue about the issue with the primary homes on the first portion of the Teal Club development. So we got a lot of work to do here in a lot of different areas. Believe it or not, we're excited that you're here and we're going to do this study, but we have to start working with each other.
Mr. Di Benedetto, I was a little tardy in my clock here, so please wrap up.
The city, the county, the airport, and this study all have to work together. And the basis for that is going to be how you involve the neighborhood councils. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and do the written comments that we received. The first is from Joe Gosselin. It reads, "Good evening. My name is Joe Gosselin and I live in Oxnard Shores. I want to make sure that when the Planning Advisory Committee is formed, that the neighborhood councils are represented on the actual committee and not just invited to the 3 or 4 public meetings that will be scheduled. It is imperative that the neighborhoods have a clear voice and full participation in the noise study." Thank you. End of comment from Joe Gosselin. The next comment is from Joni Conterno. It reads, "I'm happy to see that a new Part 150 study is underway. The last one was unfortunately buried for decades. This study is critical to the harmony between the Oxnard Airport and the surrounding neighborhoods. Involvement from the neighborhood councils in the area must be priority. Neighborhood council representatives should be at the table from the start and all along the way. We are hopeful the 150 study will bring more resources to bear to implement solutions to the issues with the Oxnard Airport's impact upon the community, including having Oxnard Airport designated as a default right traffic airport. Our neighborhood councils are standing by. Thank you." End of comment from Joni Conterno. And Chair Fussell, we're seeing no further hands raised at this time.
Chair Fussell, I think you're on mute.
I was just saying that we thank everybody for their participation. And from my point of view, we want to be good neighbors and involve all the people who would like to be involved. And I firmly believe that transparency is the way to go. With that, I think we're at a point whereby we are going to vote to receive and file the presentation. Chair Bear, do you want to do this just together and get a roll call from everybody after we get a motion? You want to separate it out?
I don't see any reason to separate it out. I'll move that we receive and file the presentation. I thought it was helpful and informative.
I'll second Santangelo.
It's been motion and second. Can we get a roll call?
Okay, and Chair Bear, I know you said you don't want to separate it out, so it is easier for our records to do a roll call for Camarillo followed by Oxnard. Is that okay with you?
By all means, I don't want to make your life any more difficult.
Thank you so much. So this will be for Camarillo Airport Authority. Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez?
Yes.
Mayor Santangelo?
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Bravo?
Yes.
And Chair Bear?
Yes.
So that motion passes unanimously 5-0. Is there a motion for Oxnard?
I'll motion.
It's been motion that we receive and file Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
It's been motion and second. Can we get a roll call?
Okay. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo,
Yes.
Councilmember Theron,
Yes.
and Chair Fussell.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Okay, I think the next thing is the realignment is G, realignment of the Advisory Aviation Commission. Keith, you want to discuss this a little bit?
I will, chairs. So this was an item that was raised by our Board of Supervisors that on a regular basis looks at, all the various commissions and committees in the county. And the question was raised to the department to kind of evaluate, we have our Aviation Advisory Commission, and then we have our two airport authorities, Oxnard and Camarillo. Are they effective? Are they efficient? Having these and, being with the county for 15 months. If you've looked at the agendas for the AAC and the airport authorities, they pretty much mirror each other. How did candidly, if you step back, and that's kind of in this memo we prepared, the AAC was created in 1967 when we had just one airport, the Oxnard Airport. Then when Camarillo was decommissioned and given to the county, the Joint Powers Agreement came about with City of Camarillo. So then in 1976, the Airport Authority for Camarillo was created, followed 1980 by City of Oxnard and that Joint Powers Agreement and the Airport Authority for Oxnard. So, I mean, you could kind of see how the overlap would be created. Right now it's the first Monday of the month is the AAC meetings. And then, in this month, which is typically many months, 3 days later, the second Thursday of the month is the authority meetings. And, these agendas kind of overlap. So in looking at all of that, what made the most sense, and this is our recommendation, is it is another avenue for folks to make input, community members. It is there's 10 members of the AAC. Each board member of the county has 2 appointees to help make recommendations not only to the board but also to the department. So our recommendation specifically is moving the AAC to the same day as the airport authority and having it either a lunch or breakfast meeting. And that way community members, and that's one of the questions we get is, well, which one do I attend? There's some confusion. So at least it's not 2 night meetings, but an afternoon or morning meeting and a night meeting in which community members can, make comments, get their input on issues of concern for the 2 airports. I am happy to report that we took this to the AAC Monday, and they accepted our recommendation with a twist in that they'd like to just do it as a test case for 6 months to see how it goes and then kind of reevaluate it at 6 months. So at this point, starting with their March meeting, they're going to start with a lunch meeting in March. That'll be their first meeting and carrying on for at least 6 months while they do their test. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of where we are at this point, looking for the airport authorities to kind of weigh in on this and take a motion to support our proposal.
I think the notion of trying it for an experimental period makes sense. My concern is people have day jobs, and holding meetings in the middle of the day might cause them to have lower attendance. But I think the experiment of trying it for 6 months makes sense.
I see somebody's hand is up and I don't know who it is. So I do see the mayor. So Mayor, would you give your input?
Yeah, my first thought was that I was worried about the daytime, but it seems like there's 2 opportunities if somebody can't make a daytime. then they can come to our meetings in the evening. But I think if it's okay with the, I forgot the name of their group. If it's okay with, if it's okay
Aviation
with,
Advisory Commission,
Yeah.
yes.
if it's okay with them, then it seems to me that we should go ahead and try it at least.
Councilmember Perrello is the other hand up, Dr. Fussell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember, go ahead.
Thank you. The only question I have is, it does sound like a good idea to try it on an experimental basis. But the only question I have, oftentimes this aviation advisory is composed of more people that are in the aviation business. I know when I first came on this board, I didn't know anything about the airport or the planes other than going in one and getting out of one when it lands. We're fortunate that we have 2 pilots on this body at the current time. But in the past, there have been issues that have been brought up, and the aviation advisory, as I've seen it, is an opportunity for people to come and express their views more than they can get something on the agenda, and more than they can at our board meetings. So my question is this: when these bodies meet, when this body would meet, if there are issues that come up that are of interest, who will carry that information to our board, so that we can stay abreast of issues that we were unaware of? And the first one that I will bring up was when it was the airport hangar leases. That was, like, at least for me, totally off the radar, and it exploded. And it was the advisory group that was instrumental in getting it to our attention. And then from there, it took off of a life of its own. That's just my thought.
Yeah, to answer that question, I see that as the director's role and kind of the director's report. But again, in my experience in the last 15 months, most of those issues carry over. We've had leaded fuel issues, obviously the noise issues, those have carried across both boards. And again, that's what the AAC does, not only to advise the board, but the Department of Airports. So it's kind of our role. We see the Department of Airports to make sure that that information is communicated across, both and all authorities and the commission, both ways.
So I would assume that if there's a hot issue, we would hear from when you give your report at our body.
That has been what I've been doing and would continue that. Yes.
Okay, I'm satisfied. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. That's all I got.
Thank you. Mr. Turan.
Thank you, Chair. So looking at the report that we have on this, my single question is, if this were to move forward and we start with the next determined meeting that'll be now during the day for this commission, I'm hoping that maybe our airport staff working with the PIO's office can just do some general outreach to let folks know, hey, the Airport Advisory Commission has moved to this time now, just so we're intentional about letting the public know that, beyond just the Brown Act required 72-hour notice for posting of the agendas and the date and the time and location of these meetings. Just so we go a little bit more, if staff has the capacity to be able to do that, I just think it'd be great to inform the public a little bit more that this is happening.
Councilmember Turan, no question we would do that. We already have the folks that get the agendas, and because we're, the first meeting won't be till March, we, have a couple months to get that message out. So that for sure would be our intention.
Thank you. And I just remembered, I believe you have your own public relations person or PIO for airports, correct?
We do now, part of our noise program, but to help us with things exactly like this and our Part 150 study, Mayor Santangelo had mentioned, their PIO. We work in concert with both the city of Oxnard and Camarillo's PIO and the county PIO to help us get information out as we do these public meetings. They've been very supportive in getting that information out. We will do the same, for an item like this.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to acknowledge that person is now here, and I want to thank you for dedicating resources to have that public outreach available directly through your department. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Long.
Thank you, Councilmember Duran, for asking that question. I was going to ask the same one. I think it's really important that our community knows about the change. The other question I had was, in the past when we've had our board meetings or our commission meetings, advisory meetings, whichever meetings you want to call them, we've had someone from the AAC to come and state what their position was in the past. I think we should continue to welcome them to our meetings so they could tell us what, how their vote was as well, or if they had any input. I think that would just be important for us to continue. The last few meetings, we haven't had that representation. When it was in person, we did. And so I'd like to see that come back as well. And I like the idea of the 6 months. We can easily continue it and make any modifications as needed. So thank you.
Thank you. It appears that everybody feels that this is a good idea for the 6-month period. I think we probably should split this, Chairman Bear, because it's easier for Anna if we vote from each one of the authorities.
Chair
So,
Fussell,
yeah.
you do have members of the public wishing to speak on this item when you're ready.
I'm very sorry. I forgot about the public. Isn't that bad? Okay, do we have any public comments on this issue?
Yes, we do. So we'll start with Ben DiBenedetto. Please unmute and you'll have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you so much. In the first place, this item shouldn't even be new business for the authority. The authority has no call here. You don't have to support this. The advisory commission can make up their own schedule. As the director of the airport pointed out, they have to meet once a month. This does not require any approval or support from the authority board, and they should stay out of it. In the first place, the advisory board and the authority board have 2 different missions, which are spelled out in their bylaws. As such, they should have 2 different agendas for the sake of moving an item from the commission to the authority, which they do sometimes, not all times. There needs to be an adequate time for proper posting of the agenda. To have the 2 meetings on the same day is ignorant. As far as the public that works nights, not being able to attend a meeting or have input, the email ability to communicate to the advisory operates 24/7. In 30 years of elected community service on boards and commissions that operate under the Brown Act, I have never heard this argument purported. The advisory, unlike the authority, is supposed to receive and request information from local community groups and local government organizations. Read the bylaws. Your bylaws don't say that. Like the city, and consider that the input and the recommendations that they make to the authority, which they do not. They have completely ignored their own bylaws for years. When you create the same agenda for both meetings, you get the same agenda. That's the problem. If the airport is arguing that the meetings are redundant, even though they would not be if the advisory operated under its own bylaws, if the agenda are the same for both meetings, the only thing that gets streamlined is the airport's item list getting to the authority without the required community participation in the advisory bylaws, not your bylaws, their bylaws. Except for the 3-minute comments from the public guaranteed by the Brown Act. That's a problem. It creates a built-in violation of the advisory's bylaws required to include the community and consider the community's position and discussions on items moved forward to the authority. Give you a real good example. You don't have ad hoc committees and your bylaws don't call for them. The advisory does. That's how you got your noise study. That's how you got the cooperation to do all of the stuff that we're doing now with the airport. Without that voice to the advisory committee moving forward, we wouldn't have any of this. So think about that before you decide you want to support or not support something. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll next hear from Walter Hagedorn. Please unmute and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Walter Hagedom, I'm chair of the Oxnard Shores Neighborhood Council, and we're probably one of the, maybe the most active neighborhood council in the area because the flights go directly over our homes. So we have a lot of people who are involved. And I want to say that the daytime meeting would be a problem. People who work, people who are retired don't have a problem meeting at night either. I just disagree completely about that. Definitely agree with Ben on this with the purpose of the advisory board. 2 years ago when we started this process, and things have changed a bit, but not as much as we had hoped for. But there were things we found as we've gone through this process. Like we said, we found this 150 study. I saw these things a year and a half ago, notices in the Federal Registry about the noise exposure maps that had been approved, had been accepted by the FAA, but didn't know where they went to and how they related until all of a sudden this study came up. These are things that are oversight problems. The way I see the Aviation Advisory Commission is it's an oversight board that should have more than just pilots. There should be people who are good with, understand airports and understand flight, but also there should be accountants and lawyers and people who are competent in looking at a spreadsheet to look at the financials for the airport and to direct them. The problems that the airport has right now is that it has been redundant for about 30 years. And a lot of the rules that were put in place in 2000, 2001 with the land use plan, and later with other things that came up, those things should have been worked on back then. They haven't been worked on. And the AAC is where it should have been worked on. They should have been working with the neighborhood councils. We've had more animosity than we've had cooperation. So I think that that should be an independent body. It should reach out to the neighborhood councils. It should be an advisor to you because you can't make all these choices. You have many things on your plate. This should be how these issues come to you and how they get agendized. They get agendized first by the advisory commission because that's the way it's been set up, but it hasn't been working that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll next hear from Barb Filkins. Please unmute and you'll have 3 minutes.
I think I'm unmuted, and just to Walter and Ben's comments, I was on the Monday meeting and I said that I've been in this position in the healthcare world in the past. The question I have, and I don't know if it can be dealt with either policy or how things are structured. If the advisory could be put into a space where it is a trusted advisor with transparency and representation across the community and the county, but not necessarily bound by some of the governmental artifacts like the Brown Act. In other words, there will be discussions and there will be a fairly dynamic discussion on some of these elements. I can think of some of the things I could talk about as far as the noise studies and access to data and analysis that might be very informational to the county relative to what the contractor's doing. And I realize there's boundaries and things that need to be dealt with there. But the bottom line is, should the whole premise of the advisory be looked at in different light in terms of its bylaws and its role relative to the authority? And I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot more behind that needs to be discussed, if that's the way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Filkins. Anna?
Yes, I'll next read the written public comments that were received. The first is from Joe Gosselin. It reads, "Good evening. My name is Joe Gosselin. I'm opposed to the recommendation of moving the advisory commission from nighttime to morning or lunchtime. Moving the day and time would eliminate an untold number of citizens from attending due to work constraints. These meetings should remain on a separate day from the authorities meeting and should be held after 5 p.m. Moving the meeting from the evening would actually do the opposite of broadening public outreach and transparency. The commission needs to hear and digest the public's concerns and viewpoints before making any recommendations to the authority. Keeping the current structure would at least give the public some say, although many of us believe that since the agendas are identically set, that public comment is basically meaningless. It has become apparent that the commission not only does not value the public input, but they pretty much always ignore the public's comments and requests. Instead, they all just quote rubber unquote stamp the agenda items. Thank you. End of comment from Joe Gosland. The next comment is from Susan Tatum. It reads, my understanding is the Airport Advisory Committee is supposed to receive and request info from local community groups and government organizations and consider that input in the recommendations they make to the authority. Item G is a perfect example of the advisory committee not doing its job. On Monday night, the authority heard abundant comments from the public against combining the two meetings and holding them during the day. The reason for the opposition is because it reduces our opportunity to understand and respond to airport issues that are impacting our lives. The lack of communication is bad enough as is. This can make it worse. Members of the authority who are elected officials should be aware that this recommendation does not reflect the feelings of many of your constituents. Please keep that in mind as you vote on this and other recommendations that are put before you. Thank you. End of comment from Susan Tatum. The next comment is from Joni Conterno. It reads, the commission's job is to gather information, resources, and input from the public and report to the authority. This agenda item states its intent is to broaden public outreach and transparency. Monday night, the commission heard numerous public comments unanimously opposed to moving the meeting time. There was not one public comment in favor of the move. The job of the commission is to listen to the public. We provided input, and instead of listening, the commission disregarded the input and did the opposite. They voted to start morning meetings in March, possibly on the same day, on a trial basis. Were they not listening? Keep the meetings separate and in the evenings. Thank you. End of comment from Joni Conterno. And Chair Fussell, we're seeing no further hands raised at this time.
Okay, since there are no more public comments, I think it's sort of left to us whether or not we support the AAC's recommendation. So we have a motion, at least from Oxnard.
I'd like to move that we modify the proposal that's on the table and add the 6-month addendum so that we do it on a trial basis for 6 months, see what happens.
Okay, a motion is now on the floor to make this a 6-month trial and then look at it.
I'll motion to approve that.
Supervisor Long, I didn't hear what you said.
I would motion to approve that.
Okay,
Okay.
Is that a Camarillo? Or-
Well, I think that would be for Camarillo since Supervisor Long sits on. So why don't we do a roll call vote for Camarillo on the amended motion, and then Oxnard can do one as well.
Do we need a second? I will second.
okay, go ahead and get a roll call then from Camarillo.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Mayor Santangelo,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez Bravo,
Yes.
Chair Bear.
Yes.
The amended motion passes unanimously 5-0.
And I'll motion that for Oxnard.
We have a motion for Oxnard. Do we have a second?
Second.
Supervisor Lopez, second the motion. Can we get a roll call?
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Lopez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo,
Yes, and I'd like to go on the record. This is another case in my mind of a classic. There should be an attorney here to address the very specific questions that were asked, but I'll support this.
thank you. Councilmember Taran
No,
and Chair, I'm sorry, was that a no?
correct. That was a no.
Okay, thank you. And Chair Fussell.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 4-1 with 1 no vote by Councilmember Paran.
Okay, can we move on now to the director's report?
Chairs, yes, move to the director's report. I have several items I'll run through. The first was an item from a couple meetings and then a letter from Council Member Camarillo to the county, as he had mentioned a few times in a few meetings about having county council at these airport authority meetings. So I discussed the item at length with county council, and there are a few challenges in doing that. In the past, we've had county council attend. Most of that was a carryover from previous complex issues we've had, like the private hangar leases. That's why they were there, and just a carryover to answer specific questions on legal matters on documents we were working at. So the challenges we have is that the bylaws do not allow for county council to be in attendance, and who pays for county council's time. So that's the first issue. So we'd have to change the bylaws, which most of the entities that are tied to the JPA would have some concerns probably. Then it's a cost sharing thing. The last and most complex thing is county council represents the county side. So our board of supervisors and the airport, because we're part of the county, but it gets a little complex if county council would be advising, say, city of Oxnard or city of Camarillo representatives and or the public members. So it really gets complex. You could almost argue that, if we needed county council, we would have county council. City council members would then invite their city council to help advise, and then the public members might hire their own legal counsel if they felt that's appropriate. So it's a very complex issue. Where we left it is that we would do as we've done in the past. If there is a matter which we know would likely bring up legal counsel questions, then we would invite them to those. As we've done in the past, if something pops up, we might hold or push that item to the next meeting and then invite county council to that. Even our county council said, at meetings, typically they wouldn't give a legal opinion because they'd have to go back and research that, wouldn't necessarily off the cuff give a legal opinion right there on the spot. So that was kind of the input we got from county council. To me, that makes sense. We would continue. That's what I've done in the past at previous locations. As needed, we would invite county council to answer legal questions. So wanted to share that. Obviously, we can have further discussion if something else comes up.
I see the Chair Bear has his hand up. I think it's appropriate, since he is an attorney, to give his input.
Well, I think that Director Freitas brings up a good point, that county council's client is the county. And for county council to give advice that would impact Camarillo or Oxnard puts county council in a conflict position, especially if that advice relates to the city's relationship with the county. But perhaps we should have on call, not necessarily at every meeting, but on call, some outside counsel that the authorities can call on, who's separate and apart from the county. Now, whether that's outside independent private attorney that gets paid by the hour on an occasional basis. But I think that Councilmember Perello's comments, his ongoing comments about the need to have counsel, those comments are well taken. I think there's a lot of things that we do that we need legal advice on. And, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not a public sector government relations lawyer. And I think having that expertise from someone outside makes a lot of sense on an as needed basis.
Any other comments? I see a hand, but I don't know.
Yeah, Chair Fussell.
Okay.
I appreciate that the director asked the county council Yes, I am an Oxnard City Council, and I serve with another Oxnard City Council member and 2 boards of supervisors. But when I sit on this body, I represent the Oxnard Airport Authority. And when there's an issue that if it's just the airport authority, I also can ask questions about the Camarillo Airport Authority. I don't represent the city of Oxnard on this body. The same as when I serve on the Ventura Regional Sanitation District, the same as when I serve on the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management, the same as I just left the meeting, the Greater Organization of Governments. You wear multiple hats. I can appreciate the county being in a situation, but I will tell you, the way I have been seeing things over the few years that I've been on here, and some of the questions I've asked, we put the airport director right behind the bullseye. He makes a decision, or one of his staff, and we take that as accurate, which later will come up and be challenged. And then who's going to be, for lack of a better word, hung out to dry? We didn't get the attorneys to give us an answer. I appreciate the board member, Mr. Baird, his questions. Yeah, you need specialists in this thing. But if memory serves me right, we recently had an issue about zoning, or may not have been zoning, something about the size of the building. We've had one about a contract tonight. We've had one about making an amendment on a contract. We've had challenges to something, the Brown Act and the bylaws. I mean, I'm not up to speed on that. I get appointed on this by the majority of my city council. And the reason I get appointed here is to do the best I can to represent the city of Oxnard on this body, not to simply look out for the city of Oxnard. And again, I appreciate Mr. Freitas taking this in, and if the bylaws do not allow it, I was unaware of that. But I would then ask, why were the county council so many times at those meetings when it got hot, and they were asked all the time at the hangar? If it wasn't allowed, why were they there then? I'm not trying to open up a can of worms. Thank you, Chair, for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Perrell. I have several concerns with regards to the answers. I would like, if possible, could you get the people from the county, the lawyers? I think they have quite a few attorneys there, and I understand that attorneys specialize in things just like physicians do. But I think I would feel more comfortable if they could explain to us why they can't spend 2 hours per month with this board. I mean, the authority running a multi-million-dollar organization, and to pay an attorney $300 or $400 for a couple of hours from a multi-million-dollar budget for the county doesn't seem to make sense to me, particularly if we get hit with some suits and stuff. And there are a lot of people who are complaining out there about things that are going on. I think if we can do a little prophylaxis, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I would kind of like for you to look in this little and share with the board a little bit more than just we don't think that we can do this right now. I don't like the answers that we're getting, for lack of a better term.
Okay, this issue is not yet closed, and we'll have further discussion. I'll move, unless there's any additional questions, I'll move to my next item.
Thank you.
Looks like there's not. Update, we are in the process, the Department of Airports is in the process of adding a second deputy director. Currently, we have Dave Nafee. He is assigned kind of the business side of the airport, overseeing the administrative functions, projects, leases, finance, general administration. new position, deputy director, balance to oversee the operations and maintenance. Looking to open that just opened last week. Department Airport, new noise reports. We had a subcommittee made up of the airport authorities and the AAC. Members helped us in crafting what they'd like to see. Our new communications and engagement manager, Jeanette, has worked with our new VNOM system to kind of pull that new data. That's what you'll see in the reports in this packet. We're open to modifying that or adjusting that if additional need or interest is there. And again, as we fully maximize our new VNOM's noise tracking system. Happy to report our accounting folk team here at the airport expects to have an online payment availability in the second quarter of this year. Has not been available in the past, so that'll be a nice benefit to our businesses and tenants. We continue to work on bringing in new technology, business and jobs to both airports. The Board of Supervisors, as went through this authority several months ago, approved effective December 1st our partnership with the University of Alaska Fairbanks and their Pan-Pacific UAS drone test site capabilities and supporting. We've got companies like Skyrise and Amp Air that are already here doing new technology testing and flights at our airports. And we're in talks with companies like Jaunt Air Mobility, FathomWorks over at Port Hueneme, and Swarm Air. Again, trying to build this partnership to attract those new quiet technology, environmentally friendly technologies to our two airports. It seems to be moving along pretty well at this point. Unleaded fuel, we continue to work with our main fixed base operators. It looks like leading the pack is Golden West over at Oxnard Airport. They're hoping to bring their first load of unleaded fuel at the end of January to be available for sale. Channel Islands Aviation continues to work with their vendor to bring it following that in the very near future. We will, I think I mentioned in the past, propose in the next round of rates and fees for the Department of Airports to waive the per gallon fee for those selling unleaded fuel at the airport as an incentive. Our commitment to supporting them bringing in that new environmentally friendly fuel. Private hangar lease agreements, those were approved, and we are now starting the final phase, which is inspections and the final transition from month to month to 20-year leases with our hangar tenants. We've done about 3 rounds of inspections. I think we have about 15 tenants that have completed. We've got 220 total tenants to get through, and our target is to have that wrapped up by January. Security camera system, we were hoping to get that up and running by the end of the year. Supply chain issues kind of push that now. Weather's kind of delaying, but we are starting construction by the end of this month and pending weather, but should have it up and operational. There's a test period of about 3 months checking the system. So we're expecting that to be fully operational by the second quarter of this year. I think we have some visuals on the most recent Cloud9 project. It is coming along. That is the 4 25,000 square foot hangars on the corner of Las Posas or along Las Posas. That is moving along. Moving over to Oxnard, our taxiway connector project, about an $8 million project. We were hoping to start, as a matter of fact, this week, but because of the weather, had to push and postpone that to April 3rd. Our contractor asked, the weather outlook all the way through March is wet, so they asked to push it to April 3rd. It's about a 120-day project to get that through. So On the picture you see in front of you, the aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicles that we have at Oxnard Airport, because we continue to maintain that Part 139's commercial airport certificate. Our primary and our backup vehicles were in poor shape, as noted by our FAA cert inspector last year. We were able to work with some sister agencies. Burbank, this vehicle, it's a 2004 Oshkosh vehicle. They donated it to us at no cost. That's significant because these pieces of equipment, brand new, are in the $900,000 range. A refurbished version of this, you would get on the aftermarket this same year, you'd spend $450,000 on it. So the gift from Burbank was much appreciated, and we've got some work to do on it, but should be up and running. We're hoping by March. So you probably saw in the newspaper, maybe news media, we had a fire at the Oxnard Terminal building on the 10th, about 11:30 at night. It appears to be, security camera shows, one of the tenants in there, just their computer monitor caught fire. Don't know why, obviously, but has done some significant damage to the terminal. I mean, the fire itself wasn't significant, but a lot of smoke, that kind of thing. They were actually there within 20 minutes of the fire. We had a individual that was catching a shuttle to LAX, reported the fire. So you can see when the fire starts to fire units being there, it was actually just 20 minutes. So that was fabulous. The bad part is we just found out today that there's asbestos in the ceiling and in the floor tiles, which now means the repair is, instead of 2 weeks, more like 2 months to get the remediation, get that out of the building. So we're working with our tenants to find alternative locations and over the next 60 days. And then the last item I want to, and it was touched on earlier, I want to thank Barb Filkins in particular. One of the things, as I met with city council members, both at Oxnard and Camarillo, Councilmember Turan, Perello, Mayor Zaragoza at the time, City Council Member Lopez, and now Supervisor Lopez, was very clear, and the same as Supervisor Mayor now, Santangelo, that we need to do a better job of connecting airports with the community. The pilots and the businesses understand the value of the airports, but our connection with those that don't fly directly, we needed to work on that. So I had a discussion early on several months ago with Barb Filkins. What kind of things could we do? The Young Eagles program came up. That's where Experimental Aircraft Association, they've been doing this for more than 30 years. They basically, pilots donate their time and their airplanes to fly young adults ages 8 to 17, no cost, get them up, get them involved, get them exposed to aviation. Barb went even further. She tricked a whole bunch of folks into bringing their planes for display. And we'll see a little video here that shows all the folks. But I do want to recognize Experimental Aircraft Association 1469, Experimental Aircraft Association 723, those two memberships at Oxnard and Camarillo, the 99s, Ventura County 99s, the Commemorative Air Force, California Aeronautical University, Aspen Helicopters, and then the Tower folks up at Oxnard all participated and did a fabulous job. We had our communications engagement manager, one of the things in trying to do communication, put together this wonderful video. I don't know if Dave, you're able to run this.
We'll see. Unexpected result. So stand by.
Director, while he's queuing up that video, do we have any updates on the fuel pit at Camarillo?
The last report continues that AVEX is working with their vendor, supply chain challenges, that continue. So nothing new to report at this time. We continue monthly to have discussions with them and where they are with that.
Thank you.
Well, Keith, it doesn't seem like we're going to have this in
All
the
right.
show.
Well, we'll
If you'd
save
like,
that.
I can keep working on it.
We'll save that for another time. But again, a lot of good pictures out of the event. Our PIO, our communications engagement manager, Jeanette, did a fabulous job of getting information out. I think many of you saw some of the things we put out. So that's all I have for the director's report at this time.
Thank you very much. I think we've all looked at the correspondence. We'll move on to comments from the authority. While we're waiting on comments, I'd just like to make a few comments. I think that we're really turning the corner at both Oxnard and Camarillo airports. We have a new helicopter, which the director had mentioned, and that's pretty nice. Plus a new fire truck and the Young Eagles this past December. And I think we're making some really positive moves with reference to transparency with the county. So from my perspective, I think in this new year, we're doing a lot of good things and right things. Just because I'm unhappy with the attorneys backtracking doesn't mean that we aren't doing a lot of good things. So do we have any other comments from the authority? I see your hand is up, Supervisor Long.
Thank you. I just want to again welcome our two new board members. I really appreciate you being on here. And also just thank you to our staff. Really great presentations today. Really appreciate making sure the focus is on our community members, our residents, our pilots, so that we can really move forward in a really good way. And so Mr. Freitas and your team, just thank you for that leadership. I really appreciate that you outreach with the city of Oxnard, city of Camarillo, and all. It's just great to see. It's nice to be where we are right now. So thank you. And happy.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. Mr. Turan.
Thank you, Chair. I thank you very much, Supervisor Long, for that welcome, and for everyone who's given myself and Councilmember Dr. Martinez-Bravo the nice welcome. I just want to say thank you as well for the opportunity to serve on this board. I am very appreciative of it, and I do want to say that I really enjoy being able to serve our community in a number of different ways. This is a new one for me. I have lived near the airport, the Oxnard airport, for almost my entire life. I could probably walk there in about 5 or 10 minutes from where I sit right now. And I just really appreciate being able to be involved in this. And I will say that there's an ongoing joke for me. You can tell how busy I am by how long my hair is. So I hope next time I see you, I find the time to get a haircut and be a little bit more fresh for my colleagues here tonight. But I'm really excited and looking forward to working with you all and working with the public in this capacity. And then lastly, congratulations to our chair and vice chairs from our respective authorities. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Perillo.
And I'd like to thank all the people that spoke, public comments, all sides, everyone. It takes a lot to get up and say something. I want to thank them all for saying something. I want to congratulate the new people on the board. I want to congratulate the new people elected to lead the Camarillo and the Oxnard Airport. I also want to thank sincerely Supervisor Vianney Lopez, because I had a very difficult time getting on board and she was able to hook me up and get me on board. So thank you again, Supervisor Lopez. As a side note, I have spent a fair amount of time down at the Oxnard Shores neighborhood, and I can tell you from parking that there are more people that when they take off, they do go, it appears to me, from spending a fair amount of time there, there are more people that do go out over the ocean before they start their turn. So we are making success in that angle. And I wanted to share that with you. Thank you very much. It's a good meeting tonight. Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you very much, Supervisor Lopez.
Thank you, Chair Fussell. I want to echo the comments of my supervisor colleague, Supervisor and Vice Chair Long. And thank you to all the staff. Want to wish everyone a happy new year. And I am going to put Councilmember Turan a bit on the spot because today is his birthday and it's his first meeting on the Airport Authority. So just want to wish him a very happy birthday and glad to have him as part of the Airport Authority, and pleasure to continue serving with the rest of you here on the authority. Thank you.
Thank you and happy birthday.
Birthday.
Any other comments? If there are no other comments, we stand adjourned.
Happy birthday, Gabe.
Happy birthday, Gabe.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Birthday.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated.
Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Success.